Motorhead Snaggletooth is one of the most iconic mascots ever. But did you know that Lemmy initially thought Snaggletooth was really soppy? Or that guitarist Fast Eddie Clarke actually shuddered when he first saw it? So today, let's take a look at the true history behind Snaggletooth's creation, discuss the controversy around it and the changes Motorhead were forced to make to him, and then discuss why exactly he became one of the most badass mascots in rock history. Here you go. By the way guys, as always, real quick before we start, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our Metal Pilgrim channel is of course to start a conversation. But alright, let's do it. In 1977, artist Joe Petano, who had previously collaborated with bands like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, was commissioned to create the artwork for Motorhead's self-titled debut album. Well, he actually was first approached by Motorhead's management to come up with the band's logo, yet after a while, it grew into something much more, becoming one of the most recognizable mascots in not only metal, but in music overall.
Boars, wild boars skulls and gorilla skulls, and made a hybrid skull of dog gorilla type thing, and Lemmy loved it.
When given the task to Joe, Lemmy Kilmister envisioned a logo that encapsulated the band's raw and aggressive ethos, describing his vision as a fusion between a rusty, decaying robot and a knight-errant with armor. Yet, it looks like Joe went in a slightly different direction. According to Petano, his main inspirations came from outlaw biker patches, most of which back in the late 70s had some kind of skulls and bones on them. But at the same time, he didn't want his new logo to be a 16th century pirate flag ripoff. And so when doing research, he accidentally came across a book of animal skulls. And that's when it hit him that an animal skull would actually look much more badass than a human one. After trying out a couple of different shapes from the book, none of which worked the way Joe wanted them to, Petano started experimenting with combining the features from different animals, ultimately creating a Frankenstein of a sort. As the lower part of the skull was taken from a wolf, the cranium was that of a gorilla, and in order for it to look even crazier, Joe decided to also throw in some boar teeth into the mix, creating one of the most insane creatures in metal. Yet, instantly enough, on the original drawing presented to Motorhead, Snaggletooth actually had horns up on his head with chains in between them. Yet, according to Lemmy, he actually thought that it looked too soppy and asked to put the horns in the mouth instead, at least for the first album. Yet, as we all know, they never changed it, ultimately finalizing the look of one of the most recognized mascots in history. By the way, the items hung on the chain in between the horns were added at the very end, with a human skull being there for reference specifically to underline the creature's size, and the iron cross on the right was hung there as a sign of bravery, for which Motorhead of course have gotten plenty of heat throughout the years. So I guess it's a good thing that not many people know that the very first published version of Snaggletooth also had a swastika on a metal spike on the helmet, which was later on removed only on the subsequent reissues of their debut album. Yep. By the way, a fun fact, although we Motorhead fans of course do have name or names for the mascot, calling it Snaggletooth, the Warpig, or Metal Hog. Yeah, I even heard that one. Unlike Derek Riggs and Eddie, Joe Petano never actually named his creature, although he did have a name for him.
I don't have a name for it. It's just a little bastard for me, you know.
But nevertheless, when Joe presented the final version of Snaggletooth to Motorhead, Lemmy instantly loved it, as it was much more suitable to the raw and aggressive sound Motorhead propagated compared to the first futuristic and more Hawkwind-like designs Joe originally presented to the band. Yet at the same time, not every Motorhead band member actually felt that way, with Fast Eddie Clarke remembering that he shuddered when he first saw it, thinking that this ain't gonna go down that well because it was just way over the top, although he of course pointed out that he grew to love it later on. But the craziest thing is that the reason why Eddie Clarke did not like it at first was not because it was too scary, but because in those days, this was supposed to be deemed bad taste. And the craziest thing is that this, I believe, is exactly why Snaggletooth became the iconic mascot it is today. First of all, Motorhead was always much more than just about music. They represented a lifestyle, raw, rebellious, loud, and uncompromising. And Snaggletooth perfectly captured this fierce attitude visually, with its aggressive and rebellious look resonating with metalheads, punk rockers, and bikers alike, symbolizing freedom, rebellion, and relentless independence. And interestingly enough, it actually served a very different purpose from that of another iconic metal mascot, Eddie. As when it comes to him, he was like an additional band member for Iron Maiden, always doing things which the band themselves couldn't really do themselves, and taking the blame for whatever crazy stuff Iron Maiden management came up with. When the purpose of Snaggletooth was completely the opposite. It actually represented Motorhead, and stood exactly for everything Motorhead themselves stood for, starting from the late 70s and up until the very end of this iconic band.
Don't forget us. Our name is Motörhead. We play rock and roll.
And secondly, Snaggletooth was extremely versatile and adaptable. With each new Motorhead release, Joey Patana introduced variations to the mascot, tweaking details to fit the album's themes. From bomber planes to Western-inspired art, Snaggletooth wasn't just a logo. It always lived together with the band and their music, with Joe sometimes going so over the top and into the details that the band and the management themselves actually had to stop him and tune Snaggletooth down a bit from time to time. Which, by the way, there's just so much to talk about, so if you would like me to explore the different variations of Snaggletooth throughout the years, especially the versions which were never released, please let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to do so, because some of those that never actually made it on the album covers are absolutely insane. But more than anything, in addition to Snaggletooth being extremely distinct and immediately recognizable even from a distance, it became iconic because it was inseparable from Lemmy himself. Lemmy's unapologetic personality, uncompromising attitude, and genuine love for rock and roll infused Snaggletooth with authenticity. And to this very day, wherever Snaggletooth appears, Lemmy's rebellious spirit is right there with it, immortalizing both the mascot and the legendary man behind it. But anyways, what do you guys personally think about Snaggletooth, and which is your favorite version of the mascot throughout the years? Please let us know in the comments, as well as whether you would like me to do that special episode about the different versions throughout the years and the ones that never made it on the album covers. But for now, thank you so much for watching this short video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!